Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of our Polity Quick Revision series. So in this video, we'll talk about the Panchayati Raj system, the Panchayati Raj institutions or PRIs. So here we'll take a look at the act itself, which is a significant landmark, if you see, in the evolution of the grassroots level democratic institutions in our country. Okay, and that is the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992. And we'll also take a look at the salient features of this particular act. So without any further delay, let's get started. We are going to look at Panchayati Raj, and I'll tell you how exactly Panchayati Raj, extend that and try to understand your municipality chapter a little better. Okay, so all good? All right. So there is this chapter on Panchayati Raj, and Panchayati Raj, we all know Panchayati Raj because, you have seen ward councils, right? You've seen local elections. If you come from a big city, then you would have seen mayor elections. So you've seen all of these things, right? The civic body polls in your state, whether it's the next mayor, you have seen all of these things. But however, one thing to note is that these are not some things that have been there in Indian sort of polity since independence, right? So these are the results of your, while this idea was always there, it was actually constitutionalized and implemented through the 73rd Constitutional Amendment. And when was the 73rd Constitutional Amendment? 1992, right? So not too long ago. Oh, it's given right here. Okay. 73rd Amendment was your 1992. Okay. And what this does is that it takes your democracy from your representative sort of democracy all the way till grassroots levels. Okay, and here, so you will notice, see there are some article numbers, right? Some technical, some added details. Okay, you can remember it if you can, if it is possible for you, but focus a little more on what are the the functional aspects here. See, there was another 11th schedule that was added to the Constitution. Where did we look at these schedules? Which chapter was it? In this particular chapter, we have already seen that, okay, there are some new schedules and all. Okay, and now we are elaborating that. Now, the idea here was already introduced in from 1947 all the way till 1950 in our Constituent Assembly, when we wanted to ensure that this Article 40 sort of a message is given, or a direction is sort of given. Now, Article 40 talks about the state shall take steps to organize village panchayats and give them such powers, or endow them with such powers and authority as whatever is required in order to enable them to function as units of self-government. So not only like some local panchayats in elections, but you've got to sort of give them adequate functions. Okay, give them funds, ensure that the functionaries are sort of empowered enough to be able to take steps. Okay, so DPSP. Okay, all of these things have been there. Now, this particular act has given a constitutional status to the Panchayati Raj institutions. It has brought them under the purview of the justiciable part of the constitution. So, in other words, the state governments are now under constitutional obligation to adopt new Panchayati Raj system in accordance with the provisions, whatever is given in this particular act, this Constitutional Amendment Act. Okay, it's an important chapter, by the way. Okay, it's an important chapter. Now, within this, there are two different sets of, categories. Okay, what are the compulsory provisions? What are the voluntary provisions? We'll look at most of these things. And in fact, the question could be that the mandatory sort of provisions, under this particular act are so and so. So they may give you, okay, from this list, something A. Okay, this could be voluntary. The state could adopt it. It could be B, voluntary. C, this could be mandatory. And D, voluntary. Okay, and again, sincere apologies, okay, for not, I hope you can understand what I wrote, mandatory. Okay, I've swallowed some letters. The point is, then what do we have to do? You have to ensure that you at least know what are the mandatory sort of provisions. So anything that is not a mandatory provision, you can understand that those could be your voluntary provisions. So just tips and tricks, right? So like how we did the major chunk of our syllabus, we took look at 80% which are common, right? PM and CM, Council of Ministers in the center and the Council of Ministers in the state, right? And then you have your parliament and you have state legislature, right? Things of this nature. And then we say that 80% of them are sort of similar, but there will be some 20% sort of differences, some dissimilarities. So we can focus on that. Similarly, if you study, what are the mandatory provisions, the voluntary, anything that is not the mandatory provision that you've read in your Laxmikanth, those are the ones that are going to be part of your voluntary sort of provisions. Okay, so the compulsory or the mandatory or the obligatory provisions of the Act have to be included in the state laws creating the new Panchayati Raj system. And the voluntary provisions, on the other hand, they have to be included. They can be included by the state, okay, depending upon whether the state wants it or not. So the voluntary provisions of the Act ensures that the right of the states to take local factors into account or into consideration, right? So it means that this Panchayati Raj system, while there should be some features that are sort of uniform throughout the country, but that does not mean that every single state should have the same kind of a Panchayati Raj system. So that means you're also letting the state or the state legislature, and state legislature means whom, right? Your MLAs, right? So because we have sort of put our own sort of representatives in our assemblies, so they get to choose, okay, or sort of adopt some system that works better for those states. For example, we'll come to those examples in a bit. Okay, so primarily this transfers the representative sort of democracy into participative democracy, right? Into a participative democracy. There is going to be a ward councillor in your street or in your nearby streets, right? Because they sort of break it down into a smaller sort of a chunk of area and a smaller sort of chunk of population. So in a ward council, generally the elections will be, 1,000 something plus votes. Okay, 2,000 votes, something along these lines. Okay. So even in that level, we are bringing in, an elected sort of a leader who all those elected leaders in that particular place are going to go to that civic body, and then they are going to sort of elect from amongst them a mayor or something like that, if it is like a big capital city, right? So things like that, or things of that nature. So I hope this is clear. Now, this act provides for a Gram Sabha, okay, in Panchayati Raj. Okay, if you start looking at the salient features here, you will start noticing that let's talk about the Gram Sabha. The Act actually provides for a Gram Sabha, okay, and this is the foundation of your Panchayati Raj system. It is a body consisting of persons registered in the electoral rolls of a village, comprising of the area within that panchayat at the village level. So wherever you go, whichever village you're from or your town or whatever it is, anybody who's in that electoral rolls are all part of the Gram Sabha. Meaning any adult staying in that particular place, or whose native place is that is his native place or her native place, okay, and is of 18 plus years, they are going to be part of the Gram Sabha. Okay, so this is becoming the village assembly, consisting of the registered voters in the area of a panchayat. Now they get to sort of elect representatives from that level. Now again, it is a 3-tier system for the most part. Okay, it is a 3-tier system. So you have this sort of a Panchayati Raj at the village level. You have it in intermediate level or a block level or a mandal level, and then you also have it in the district levels. So this act brings about some sort of uniformity in the structure of the Panchayat Raj throughout the country. But however, I told you, right? So it really depends on the states on how they want it. There are some states with population that are quite less, 20 lakh population. Okay, so if it is less than 20 lakh, then you may not need to, or they may not constitute a panchayat at the intermediate level. Okay, it is too small for having 3 tiers. So just keep that in mind. So 3-tier system for the most part, but there are exceptions. Okay, so 3-tier system with some exceptions. See, in a democracy, we need to have elections in order to have a proper way of saying who is going to be the representative. And that is why we have this election. And for that, we have to have free and fair sort of elections, right? So all the members of the panchayat at the village level or the intermediate level or whichever levels that we're talking about, they are elected directly by the people. Okay, and these are the members. So members and direct election. But however, when it comes to the chairperson of the panchayats, okay, and especially at the intermediate and the district levels, they are elected indirectly. So for instance, do you guys get this? So what happens is, let's say there are people. These are all the people they elect from this particular place. A, B, C, D, and then what happens is from amongst your A, B, C, D, E, whatever it is, these guys have to elect a leader of their own. Okay, chaired by the leader who is going to be A. That is what they mean by indirect sort of elections. Okay, but however, the chairperson of a panchayat, just note this exception. Just note this exception, That's why I keep saying that, you have to read a little more and more frequently. Okay, you have to keep revisiting these topics a few times so that you can remember these subtleties, right? So the chairperson of a panchayat at the village level shall be elected in such a manner that the state legislature determines. For the rest of this, it is going to be the system that I told you. It's something like this. Okay, I hope that is clear as well. For instance, you guys may have seen this particular news. Have you guys seen this? Did you ever come across this in the news? So Aryarajendran, okay, she is still a college student. Okay, she's 21 years and she's in college, I believe. I don't know if she graduated in 2021 or at least during when this news was out. She was still a college student, and she successfully contested the civic body polls that happened in 2020, I believe, and and she was even elected as the next mayor in the state capital of Trivandrum. Okay, and she's the youngest person to occupy that particular post anywhere in this country, right? Anywhere in this country. So that is great because see, Kerala in terms of some social sort of developmental measures, Kerala does absolutely amazing job, right? She belongs to the left LDF. Okay, LDF is basically the Left Democratic Front, and that is a coalition. Okay, that is formed by alliance between some like-minded kind of parties, leftist sort of parties, right? With India's population being very young population, okay, this sort of makes sense that the people who are sort of taking part and sort of governing us also, the younger sort of voices will be represented, right? I remember when I was in in my, I believe it was eighth, right? In eighth, we had a inter-school debate sort of a competition. I think this was a cluster region of like some 3 districts or something like that, in which the topic that was given to us was should the voting age be reduced to 16? Okay, from 18. Okay, and this is about how do we strengthen democracy. In when we became independent, what was the minimum age to for voting?
21.
21.
When? Oh, you guys remember, this is it. Okay, because when I had gone for that debate, I did not know that. I found that out much later. Okay, and apparently the previous generation also had a similar sort of a debate that went on, and this is about whether the voting age should be reduced from 21 to 18. And that was the same thing that was sort of given to our generation. And when it was given to our generation, it was basically from 18 to 16. So I remember me and my debating partner, we were still thinking about, if you finish your 10th, you are sort of, sort of intelligent, and, you can understand things, and you sort of want to get involved in these sort of activities, right? Especially as the new leaders of the country. But apparently the argument previously used to be that, you can get married and you will be like, a mother and a father to children who are probably even entering schools, but however, you do not have the right to vote. Okay, you do not have the right to elect your representative. You do not have any political voice. Okay, so which may not be right. So things of that nature. Okay, so this is just to give you some perspective. Now in this Panchayati Raj, now can you tell me in Lok Sabha we have a reservation for whom? Reservation was an issue that we were discussing yesterday as well, even past our class times. But in Lok Sabha, what are the sort of categories where we have reservation? Reserved seats. Have you guys heard of reserved seats? We have reserved seats for whom all? SC, ST, OBC. What about women?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody agrees or disagrees with this? Okay, I think women, STs and SCs.